Oishekiri, Urhobo, and Ijaw are three of the largest ethnic groups making up Delta State in South Nigeria. The relationship between or amongst the three has at times been defined by competition for prominence and political control. It usually comes in ebbs and flows, and the decision of the Independent National Electoral Commission to delineate wards in three contentious local government councils seems to have ushered in another period of crisis in the state. A former secretary of the Dispute Resolution Committee of Nigeria Bar Association, Lawrence Erewele, joins us now to discuss what must be done to ensure that this situation does not result into another conflagration among Ishekiris, Urhobos, and Ijaws in Delta State. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here on Newsday.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the privilege to talk to Nigerians and Delta State in specificity. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Now, what are the specific legal challenges in the current ward delineation process?
Well, once again, thank you for this opportunity. There are actually no legal challenges. Rather, INEC is trying to create issues where there are no issues. How do I mean? You agree that in Warri, you have Warri South local government, Warri North local government, and Warri Southwest local government. Now, at about 1997-96, each of these local government had their local government headquarters. But suddenly, INEC rose up one day and went to divide the local government in Warri Southwest it used to be 8-2. 8 of the wards were dominated by Shekiris, while 2 Ijaws and Urhobos. And the Shekiris went to court to contest the delineation, which they felt was not in compliance with the law. And His Lordship, now retired, Honorable Justice Auta, delivered judgment and directed INEC to revert back to the 8-2 wards, which was in existence before INEC took that step. And upon appeal to Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal dismissed the motion, the appeal filed by INEC. And that position remained the position of the law. And the INEC headquarters directed the resident electoral commissioner to comply with the court's judgments, because the law is sacred. Until that order of my Lord Justice Auta is set aside, it remained the position of the law. And rather than the resident electoral commissioner rather than him complying with the decision of INEC, he was rigmaroling. At about 2019, you can imagine the resident electoral commissioner had an undertaking that after the 2019 election, they would do the needful. These are in document, these are in print. Okay, the Shekiris kept their cool, not knowing that there was an underground plan. Well, let me use that word, underground plan. All of a sudden, in 2022, the judge started brandishing a Supreme Court judgment. And in that 2023, at about April 2023, there was a meeting held. INEC now held a meeting to say they want to divide the 3 local governments in Warri. They want to redelineate the wards. And when we looked at the law, the Electoral Act now 2022 amended, Section 40 specifically, we discovered that INEC had limitation under that section. That section specifically states that INEC can either divide local government into registration areas, or, I'm stressing the word or, divide into electoral wards. In other words, once INEC does one, they can't do the other. That is Electoral Act 2022. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court judgment Ijaws are relying on was decided based on the provision of the 2010 Electoral Act. And the 2010 Electoral Act did not or never had the same provision with Section 40 of Electoral Act 2022. So when that issue came up, we said no. Under the Electoral Act 2022, INEC can only do one. And once they have done one, they can't do the other. That's the use of the word or. And if INEC, in 2023, INEC divided the 3 local governments in Warri into registration areas where each person went to register. And by Section 40 of 2022 Electoral Act, as amended, once they had done that, they cannot. The law does not permit impossible. Legs not cogit ad impossibilia. The law will not permit. So they cannot. Once they had divided the 3 local governments in Warri into region area, they cannot again divide into electoral ward until that Section 40 is interpreted. Unfortunately, the Section 40 of Electoral Act 2022 is never provided in the Electoral Act of 2010, which it just went to court with. Now, the issue is there any legal issue? I think there's no legal issue. INEC, if INEC is confused, they know what to do. Rather, INEC is trying to, when you use the word INEC, one will begin to think is the whole management of INEC. I think the chairman should look very well, should look deep into the activities of the Resident Electoral Commission of Delta State. Now, why we went to court? We went to court presently before the Federal High Court. And we were asking the court to interpret Section 40 of the Electoral Act. Because as at when Supreme Court was deciding the case of the judge went to Supreme Court in 2016. Electoral Act 2020, the 2020 Electoral Act had not come to play. So the question is, could Supreme Court have decided an Electoral Act that was not in place in 2016? The answer is no. So we went to the court and said, look, my lord, the court should determine and interpret Section 40 of the Electoral Act. So for me, there is no issue. It is INEC that wants to take, I wouldn't know what they want to do, but it appears they are fanning the embers of disunity in Delta, in Warri specifically. Otherwise, it is clear. The Electoral Act, the Operational Electoral Act, has seems to overtaken the 2010 which the Supreme Court interpreted. So it's clear. There's no legal tussle. It's just for INEC to do the needful.
All right.
And I wouldn't know why INEC want to choose and pick and choose.
All right.
Yes.
Very, very good, Mr. Erewele. You've given us an insight regarding these narratives. But you said there is no legal issue here. But what if INEC maintains the status quo, despite the litigations and, well, the opposition to its current actions? What becomes of, the whole scenario? What impact will it have for future electoral processes in the region?
Well, in the region, they have the region has taken political measures to settle their issues before now. For instance, one of the local governments had their headquarters moved to Ogbijo. That's a political solution against the where the headquarters of that local government is. But let me get back to your answer now. If INEC maintain the status quo, which is the situation as the wards as they are now, excellent. If INEC decides to maintain that position, which we are saying they should maintain, oh, good. What do I mean by when I use the word maintain? For instance, in the Justice Outer judgment, Honorable Justice Outer said, go back to the 8-2 wards. Now, they are saying Supreme Court had a decision which said they should further delineate. And we are saying, to maintain balance, if you leave it the way it is now, excellent, because you are now operating under the 2020 Electoral Acts. The Operational Electoral Acts. The 2022 Electoral Act, I mean.
All right, so
under that Section 40 of Section 40 of this, the Operational Electoral Act, yes, under Section 40 of this Electoral Act, the Section 40 says clearly where INEC has one duty to either divide the local government into registration area or into electoral wards, where they have already divided the local government into registration areas, which they already did in 2023. prior to the presidential election, the question you will ask yourself, can INEC again, under the same 2022 Electoral Act, divide the local government in Warri, the 3 local governments in Warri, into electoral wards under the same acts? I don't think it's possible.
All right. Do you think that there should be role that traditional rulers should play in resolving this dispute or misunderstanding?
Yes. The traditional rulers can play a very good, a very excellent role if they can call their subjects and say, look, gentlemen, this is the position of things. Like what I said, the example I gave, the Ogbujo issue, that was not where the local government was supposed to be. The headquarters of that local government was supposed to be. But they took it to the Ijaw area to maintain peace by the former His Excellency Ibori, Onanefe James Ibori. And that was to maintain peace. But as it stands, the traditional rulers can actually call them and advise them alongside with the law. You know, dura less, said less. Although the law is strict, it is the law. Under the current Electoral Act, what is the position of the law as to the delineation of local government into electoral wards? That's the issue. And it's regulated by Section 40. That same Section 40 is not captured or was never captured under the 2010 Electoral Act that Ijaw went to court with. If you read the judgment of my Lord, Honorable Justice Abaji, the lead judgment, my Lord kept using statutory. The question is, which statute was interpreted? It's 2010 Electoral Act. So for any person to come and say, because the Supreme Court, yes, the Supreme Court took that judgment based on the 2010 Electoral Act. Will you now say that the Supreme Court interpreted an Electoral Act which was never in existence in 2010? Anybody who says so, anybody who thinks like that, is the person fanning the embers of disunity, trying to cause crisis. And will urge the National Security Advisor and the President and Commander-in-Chief, because Delta State is a peace-loving state and it's an oil-rich state. God forbid that there's any destabilization there or any issue there, it will affect the oil production in Nigeria. So I will advise that the National Security Advisor and the President and the Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and all stakeholders to sit down and look into this issue critically and guide each party according to the law. We are meant to obey laws and not to take laws into our hand. And okay, let me quickly chip in this. When we went to court against INEC filed their process, a counter-affidavit to our originating summons, wherein they denied going to delineate. The question now is, in that counter-affidavit, they swore, on oaths, they said they never had any meeting to divide the local government in Warri into electoral ward. And based on that, all parties relaxed, because if on oaths before a court of law, Federal High Court Abuja, INEC could say that they never had a meeting or they don't intend to delineate. Then at what point did they not decide to go behind the scene to go and start thinking of delineation, dividing the local government? Is that not invitation to anarchy? To me, that's invitation to anarchy. On one hand, you are denying the action. When we got wind of this, when our clients got wind of this, they approached the court, which by that, they don't want to go into crisis. They are peacemakers. They went to court. And INEC filed their counter-affidavit. I wish we can bring INEC to the table here. INEC filed their counter-affidavit to deny that process. Now, they just suddenly somersaulted to say, look, they want to go and divide. On which authority? Is INEC no longer guided by the present Electoral Acts? Do they have the law which they operate on? Let us even assume they say Supreme Court. Which law did the Supreme Court interpret? Was it not this 2010 Electoral Act that the Supreme Court, that they went to court with, upon which the Supreme Court based their judgment?
All right. Seems to be a little bit of quagmire, regarding the narratives in this discussion. And hopefully there will be light at the end of the tunnel, and there will be some kind of peaceful resolution to all of this, as it were. Lawrence Erewele, former secretary. And
may I quickly state,
please,
may I quickly state...
Briefly, please.
May I quickly state this?
Yeah.
Briefly, yes. All along, the Shekiris have maintained peace. Now, all the Supreme Court judgment decided, it just have not kept to those judgments. For a clerical example, the Okeregigo and Okerekoko saga. Even when the Supreme Court said that the land where you call Okeregigo belongs to the Shekiri, till date, it has not been obeyed. Even the National Assembly at a time, during this maritime university, wanted to name the university in the Shekiri community after Okerekoko. We went to court again. And in the court, National Assembly now said, okay, since you've not gone to court, they will obey the Supreme Court judgment.
Right, yeah.
And that was how that issue was decided.
Indeed.
So I advise that all parties should look at the law.
Definitely. Lawrence Erewele, would like to thank you very much for your thoughts on these issues. It's good to have you with us.